So
There we go.
the way the sheet is broken up, is that by columns? Is that kind of what that does? Is on the right-hand side, it gets the columns. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, it's recording and transcribing. I don't want a transcript. Get out of here. Well, it can do it on its own. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're recording now. Hopefully it's recording my screen share. I don't know. We'll see when we see the video.
Yeah.
So just to repeat this, because I guess I can share it with other people who want to do this themselves. So just to reiterate, we went to Power BI on the website. We downloaded Power BI for desktop. My battery is low. Let me plug my headset in. We downloaded Power BI for desktop, and the reason that we did that is Power BI for desktop allows you to create new reports to share with other people. Let me plug my headset in real quickly. Okay, so that's Power BI for desktop. Once it's downloaded and you load up a new report, here, let me just close this one. Save file. Oh, that's Excel. That's not going to help. File, new. So I'm opening a new report, and when I open a new Power BI report, the first thing it's going to say is, where do you want to get your data from? So I'm going to say get data. And for us right now, we already set up our two data files. So we've got our demographic data file with all the information we pulled out of Focus for each kid, organized by student ID. And we have the NWEA data file for here, each kid also organized by student ID. And we're going to build some reports based around those. So I tell it, Excel, I've got the file, I know where it is. Just to reiterate, you want to put it all in one folder, because if you move the folder around, it will break everything. I can help you fix that, but it is difficult.
Let's avoid it.
Yep, let's avoid it. So we're going to put that into one folder. And now that we're telling it that we want to load it up, we click the sheet that we want, because if you have multiple sheets, you can do multiple imports. And you'll see here we've got this nice preview of all of the data and about 20 different rows of the data. I could transform this data in Power Query if I wanted to do things like on my bigger Power BI report, as the NWA data comes in, I turn the letter K into 0 so that I can do numerical stuff with grades rather than having to do it alphanumerically. But for now, in this, we're just going to straight up click load. And what you will see is that your fields will open up here. It's going to appear in just a second. And now here's my sheet with all of the data. And as you had observed earlier, every column in that spreadsheet, so every column that was in here, school, grade, digital, ethnicity, all of that, are now clickable things over here. So I could now use these for any kind of visualization that I want. So we're going to take a little bit of time and we're just going to play with some visualizations. In Power BI, you have three primary fields, or three primary tools that you're going to use over here. You've got fields, you've got visualizations, and you've got filters. And these are going to be more or less your main ways of controlling what data you're looking at and what that data looks like. Fields is the data that you have. Oh, and just as a reminder, you can click this ellipsis and rename it if you want. So I'm going to change this to demographic. This is demographic data. So fields is all of the values that we have. Visualizations is what it looks like. So if I were to click one of these things, like let's just click a column chart, I've got a little chart now here with no data in it. And it tells me I can put data in the axis, the legend, the values, and then if you want, multiples and tooltips. So let's look at grades. Let's stick grades on the axis. Now you can see it says grades and grade is on the axis. Wonderful, so useful. Why do you think there's nothing here?
There's nothing to compare it to?
You haven't clicked on it yet. Like you didn't click on that field for it to auto populate.
Right. So this field right here, values, we don't have any values in our data. So if I take this and move it from axis down to values, now you'll see we have a value of 5,120. Now that's kind of useless. Why do you have a value of 5,120? Because if we look at your data and we go over to grades and we add up all of the grades that everyone is in, 5,120. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So we also put grades on the axis, and now you've got the value of each of the grades. So it's broken up, K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Does this look like your student population? You have more 8th graders than...
Yes.
I don't think it does.
Well,
like-
we do have more 8th graders.
Does it look like you have 0
that-
kindergartners?
Yeah.
Oh, no. But our highest numbers is
Adding at
8th
this
grade.
point, right?
Yep. So the
But
reason
no, that
that it
doesn't
is...
look correct, obviously.
The reason it looks wrong is because if you come over to this values, this drop down right here, you'll see it told me to sum. It's summing those kids' grades. So what I actually wanted to do is to count the number of kids at each grade level. And now
See,
I've
8th
got
grade is
count
higher.
grade by grade. You are right. You are right. So now if I hover over it, I can see I have 156 8th graders, 147 7th, 136 6th, 155th, 141 4th. So that is where Power BI can get very powerful, is that now you're breaking this data up using your grades and your values, and you can very quickly start to build useful things. Like, for example, let's say I want to know how many boys or girls are in each grade. I can grab gender right here and drag it into my legend, and now I've got it broken up by boys and girls at every grade.
Dave, what's the difference between count and count distinct?
Count distinct is the number of discrete values that exist. So for example, well, let's change it. Let's see what it looks like. If I go to count distinct, I'm getting an exact number of each, right? That's because in 8th grade boys, there's only one value, which is 8th grade.
Okay.
So it is useful if you were like, how many different grades exist at Bella Lago? Take off the axis. I can see there are 9 different grades for boys, 9 different grades for girls, because you have boys in kinder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very, very useful if you're, say, wanting to know how many languages are spoken in a school district. Grab your language column, count distinct, 26 different languages are spoken in your school.
Okay.
How many different ethnicities are there? Okay, if I take ethnicity and I put it on, if I put ethnicity in the values and then I say count distinct, you guys have 7 languages spoken in your, or sorry, you have 7 different ethnicities in your school. So that's count distinct, but count individual is how many kids have an ethnicity in your school. It's 1,183. Your student population on this file is 1,184. So there's actually 1 kid who has a blank in their ethnicity. So let's go back and throw grades in on the value, throw grades in on the axis, and then set this back to count. This is, honestly, that's the most common thing you're going to do in Power BI. In a lot of ways in education, we just want to know how many kids are in different groups. If you're talking FSA scores, so we scroll down and we've got most recent FSA achievement level, so most recent FSA ELA achievement level, and I drag that, I put that on axes. Here you go. Immediately, kids.
Hey, Dave, we lost your
Yep.
volume a little bit.
Oh, am I good now?
I
Yes.
can hear you. It just dropped out for a second.
Oh, it must have hated me drinking my coffee. What was the last thing you caught me say?
You were talking about which one you're grabbing for FSA. Is it the most recent FSA ELA, or what did you grab?
Yep, I grabbed most recent FSA ELA achievement level.
Okay.
Scale score is going to be less useful because it's, kids could get 100 different scale scores, so it's going to be a lot of different columns. So you can also grab and expand. So just grab the little anchor in the middle and you can expand or reduce. So I expanded this here, and now you can see I'm taking the most recent FSA ELA achievement level. I'm putting it in the values, I'm putting it in the axis, and now all my values are broken out by the 5 different achievement levels kids could get. And I can see that it's 143 kids at a level 1, 320 kids at a level 2, etc. Now, if you want to get really advanced with this, you could then say, you know, show me, put most recent FSA on the legend. So now we're breaking out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s, and give me grade on the axis. And now here's what each of my grades of FSA looks like. So I can see that where the most 4s are is in 7th grade, and where the most 1s are is in 5th grade. And we can pretty quickly get to, you know, the columns are higher because of the number of kids. You can see 8th grade is the most kids, but where you have the fewest kids struggling, 7th grade, where you have the most kids struggling, 5th grade proportionally, 8th grade by count. So does that make sense how you can start to build?
Yeah, it's like using all the pivot tables in Excel.
Yep, it can be in many ways. I like to say that Power BI is like Pivot Plus. It's just a little more advanced. Now the next thing I can do, this is a nice FSA ELA by FSA ELA, right? That title's a little clunky, so I'm going to change it. I do that by clicking my paint roller right here. While I'm selected on this chart, you can always unselect by clicking the neutral area down here, and then you see it all goes away, or I can click on the applet that I'm making. And if I click the paint roller, I have a lot of things I can change, but one of them is title. And I can change this to whatever I want. So like I'm just going to say FSA by achievement level. I'm going to say FSA ELA so I don't get confused later. And now I have a nice fancy table, FSA ELA by achievement level. Let's say I want FSA math. Well, rather than building a new table from scratch, I can just Control C, copy this, click into my neutral space, Control V, and now I have another copy of my table right here. So I've got 2 copies of the FSA ELA. I'm going to give this one a new name. It's going to be FSA Math. And then over here, I'm going to, you can see it's already carried grade, it's already carried the ELAs. I'm going to drop in FSA Math achievement level. Now I've got my ELA data right here and my math data right here. Everything is perfect.
We just need to make sure that the colors match, right? Like the
That's
colors.
a great point. Yep. So it will automatically assign colors. So if you want to fix them because you're trying to show the same thing, that's with the paint roller right here as well, data colors. So I'm going to say a 1 is red, a 2 is orange, a 3 is yellow, a 4 is blue. Okay, we can do green. That's fine.
And then we can make the 5s blue.
Green and the 5s blue. I don't like any of these blues. Do like a nice, there you go, nice blue. Beautiful. When I click on this one, now if I were to copy and paste again, it would carry the colors over. But just to show you if you're trying to get the exact same color, I come over here. 1 is red, 2 is orange. Even if it's the right color, you want to set it, because if you don't set it, it will still pick the color again. Green, 3, green is yellow. Now that green one that I took, I made that color up. And even though it's right here in recent colors, let's say it's not. How can I find that? I come over here and click it. I go to more colors and I've got the hexadecimal code right here that I can copy. And then when I come over here, I can paste that color in and I'll get the exact same color. So come over here, more colors, copy the hex code. Come over here, more colors, paste. There we go. So So now we've got a nice little rainbow, and we can see how our kids are doing. The difference in the height of the column is that you had some kids who didn't take the math test last year. They took ELA, but they missed math for some reason or another. It might be that seventh graders, they took algebra
That's what I
instead.
was gonna say, because we have some
FSA math.
we have some eighth graders that are on geometry now because they took algebra last year.
Yep, could be that. You really have to get in and problem solve if you were trying to like actually figure it out. But that's usually the difference in math and ELA when we're talking middle school, is those advanced courses. Okay, so we've got two nice little graphs here. But let's say we want to know how our subgroups are doing. What could we do to figure out our subgroups? Now, the first thing that you're going to think is I'm going to go into ethnicity and I'm going to throw ethnicity onto this chart in some way, maybe down here in small multiples. And now we've got this broken up by ethnicity, maybe down here in tooltips. And now when you hover over it, it tells you each ethnicity, which is like some of those things can get really cognitively confusing. So what I would recommend that you do, the best thing for grabbing that is take ethnicity, pull it over here to your data fields filter, and you can put it for the on this page will be everything on this page. And now your users can click Black or Hispanic, and this will automatically adjust. So here's how all your Black or African American students did on the FSA. Here's how your Asian population did on the FSA by grade level. Here's how your Hispanic population did on the FSA. And that looks pretty similar to your overall because they are 70% of your student, 60% of your student population. How did your white students do? So you can, using filters, give your users control over a lot of the data. Now, if you're trying to make this visually appealing, filters can get kind of messy. I don't love using them. I like to actually hide them from my users. And what I do then is this button right here. It's called the slicer. It's got a little funnel in front of a square. If you click that, it brings up this little new applet, and I can drag ethnicity into the field. And now I have a clickable selection box that my users can use. And when they click on this box, they can say, show me all the Black and African American student scores, or show me the Hispanic student scores. And now your users have a nice interactive clickable box right in the middle of the page to start filtering this data. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Have any questions about anything so far? Slicers or data axes?
So once we create this, then we're able to share it with our teachers?
Absolutely. We'll get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Just want to get to designing the report right now. Okay. Let's say you don't like this bar graph. Like this is kind of confusing. Overall, you'd rather see it in a different form. If you click on the applet, you can click to change it to any other measure right here. So I could click table, and now I've got it as a matrix of data. And that gets really messy with the grade level. If I were to take grade level off, it would look a little more like here's the number of kids at each FSA achievement level. I could do a pie chart. Click pie chart. And now here it is, breakdown of each kid at each of the grade levels. So you can, ooh, we have an important message. Okay, don't get on the internet tomorrow. I won't, it's Saturday. So you can break those things down. Some of them are more useful. Get in and play around as you learn the tools. You'll start to see like, wow, student demographic data works way better with pie charts than it does with bar graphs. Because the pie chart inherently has a proportion of 100% built into it. Bar graphs work way better when I want counts of kids And you'll start to see some of these tools work better in some ways than others. But that's how you do that. Just one moment, please. Okay, I'm sure someone's about to call me about my car's extended warranty. That's what that was. Okay, for now, we're going to set this back to a bar graph, and I will throw grade back in that legend. Nope, grade in the axis, FSA in the legend. And we're looking at the same thing. You can put as many slicers as you want on a page. So I've got another slicer right here, and instead of ethnicity, I want free and reduced lunch status. And instead of free and reduced lunch status, I want gender. And I want ESE status. All of these can stack. So you can, shrink this to whatever size you want, make them smaller. And when a user checks it, they can say, show me the boys, show me my Hispanic boys who are in free or reduced lunch who are not ESE. Now it's broken it down to my Hispanic boys, free reduced lunch, not ESE, and I can see how they are doing. Majority of those students are scoring at a level 3. In mathematics, in ELA, you've got a lot of kids at the 2 in elementary and at the 4 in middle school. So you can start to get pretty in depth as you disaggregate that data. I tend to just put as many slicers as I can because I don't know what my users are going to want to look at. So I've got all these variables over here. I just throw them in, and then my users can decide these are the things I want to look at. You can also shrink these things. If you, again, the paintbrush gives you formatting abilities. So we could go to title. I could just turn the title off if I don't want it to say ethnicity at the top. Or that's the slicer header, isn't it? Turn the slicer header off. You can also, in items, you can change the font size. So you can shrink these things down if they're really big. Same in slicer header. Like I can make this relatively small so that I can fit more things in. You can also change the title. So like slicer header, it says here, I might just do FRL, and now there's free should be F/R, not FR/RL, free/reduced lunch, and that allows me to just save some screen real estate. And then we can just make sure everything looks nice. Sometimes when you load things up, they get moved around or reformatted based on a person's computer, and you might have to go in and change some things, but just know that you've got a lot of formatting ability there. And then the view will also allow you to look at other layouts. So it's scale to fit, but you could look at it in actual size if you wanted. You can look at it in fit to the width of the page, or you can look at it as it will show up on people's cell phones. And you can sort of control when this comes on a person's cell phone, I want it to look like this.
That part's under view, is that right?
That's in view, yep. The view button. Okay, get out of mobile layout. So that's my demographic. That is building basic applets, and you can do a lot within that. Everything that's on this one table, we could break all of these things out in many, many ways, but the real use in Power BI is linking data across different sheets together. So to practice that, we're going to need to do get data. We're going to get data from an Excel workbook, and we're going to bring in this NWEA data, just like we did with the demographics. And I want to bring in the second sheet of data. So this is the NWEA combo file that we pulled out of NWEA. It's every single test that's ever been given at your school. I can see that there's an error in this file. 294 of them to be precise. So when I click that, it's going to bring up, it's going to tell me what my errors are, and I bet it's kindergarten kids. Where's my error? Oh, it's in the norms reference data. So it's seeing the data in a format that it's not expecting to. It's finding the term user. That's fine. I don't care about that. We're just going to say close and apply. And if we do a second one of these with more advanced Power Query stuff, we'll talk about what you would do there. But for now, you can just say close and apply, and it will load it. It's just that one column will not come in properly.
Okay.
So I'm going to rename this. Rename NWEA. And now we have created what is called a data model. So I can click right here. You'll see it's giving me table tools, manage relationships. And this will bring up my relationship manager. And now I have to tell Power BI how these two data sets are related. So I'm going to click new, select my demographic file, and then it will automatically populate NWA. And it actually found it for me, student ID and student ID. And it's saying, I bet these two things are related. This is a little advanced and you don't need to wrap your head around it right now, but there are 4 types of cardinality that could exist in relationships. Whenever possible, you want your data to be 1-to-1. That means when one student ID exists on one sheet, only one student ID exists on the other sheet. And that's like the data peak. That's perfect data. That's really not going to be the case very often. What it found here is a 1-to-many. So it means on this list of demographics, every student ID only exists one time. But on the NWA data, their student IDs exist many times. And we know that's true because you've got every testing period. So fall, winter, spring, fall, winter. Kid could be up in here up to 5 times. So it's going to connect their one student ID to their many student IDs over here. Many to one would be their kids are repeated on your demographic file, but they're only once on this data file. And then many to many is kids are repeated in both places. What you will run into with many to many data is that Power BI will get very finicky in the ways that it will allow you to transform the data. It isn't going, if you're just looking at demographic data and NWA data and you have a many-to-many relationship, it's not going to be a problem. But if you take the demographic data and you link it on student ID to NWA data, and then you take the NWA data and you link it on RIT scores to a table of RIT scores that gives you percentiles, because it's many-to-many, it'll just break your relationship and it won't be able to process back when you say show me kids who are low. So, which low is on that NWA data set anyway, so it's a bad example, but it doesn't allow pass-throughs in a lot of ways. So when possible, you want 1-to-1. Power BI will usually find it, but I just want to let you know that if it's something, if you try to save the relationship and it's there's a cardinality error here, this is what that is.
Okay.
Cross-filter direction, we want that to be both. We want to be able to filter the demographics data and change NWEA. We want to be able to filter the NWA data and change demographics. We want it to filter in both directions.
When you went to manage relationships, you did auto detect, is that correct?
Nope, I did new.
You did new, okay.
Yep. Auto detect while you're starting out will work just fine. It's going to find oh, student IDs are on both of these. But okay. What you'll find, you're building a data model. And once you've built your Power BI report, somewhere along the way, Millie's going to say, hey, could you add attendance into this? And you'll say, yes, absolutely. Let me pull an attendance spreadsheet and plug it right in. Bada bing, bada boom. There's attendance. Beautiful. And then when you go to auto detect, it might find all of the kids on your demographics page have the same name as all of the kids on your attendance page. So I'm going to link it on student name. and
Yeah.
and then you can run into. So I just always make the relationships myself.
So mine was not loading as quickly as it needed to. So I just want to make sure. So I did the manage relationship. I went to new and I selected the demographic data. And then student ID, I need to select that on both sheets, or that's already
Yep.
highlighted, right? And so that's
So
when we go to
yeah.
mini.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Microsoft's IntelliSense.
Okay.
Sort of like guessing it's probably this, but yes, I could tell it. No, actually, student ID is the same as middle name over here, and now it's going to connect those. But and that's useful for sometimes you'll grab tables or someone will send you a table and it says something like UID for user ID or SID, and Power BI is maybe not going to find that. And then you can tell it SID is the same as student ID.
And I want to
So
cross
if
filter.
you're-
Sorry. I want to cross filter on both. Is that right?
Yes, sir. You
Direction?
want cross filter
Because
set to
that
both.
way they talk to each other. Okay.
Yep. It goes both ways. If you ever get into any SQL querying code, this is the same thing as a where clause.
Okay.
So. Oh, and then this box has to be checked. Make this relationship active. It should auto check it, but you will run into things like if you're filtering on student ID, and then you're like, oh, but I also need to be able to filter on student gender, and you make gender to gender something, it'll be like, nope, can't make this active. It won't allow you to do like 2 layers like that. You have to approach it in a different direction. Now, one of the cool things is that your data model has a visual representation. So if you look over here on this left column, we have 3 tools. The first is report. It's to the design view that we have been in this entire time. Let me set my view back to width. Actual size. There we go. The next one is database view. This will show you the worksheet. It looks a lot like Excel. It's just here's that data. And this is very useful for when you start getting into the coding aspect, Power BI, calculated measures, and calculated columns. But this third one here will show you your relationship model. So you can now see
this is like Access, like using Access before that I know is obsolete now.
No, Access still has a lot of uses, but Access is much more for building a database that you want to work within. This is very similar, but this is building a database you want to share out. But yes, this relationship viewer, very similar to Access. And when you have more relationships, it can get very useful. So for example, when we look at the StockTake tool, the relationship tree is pretty complicated. A lot of it's building off of the SQL table, and you can see all of these connections. It's saying student ID is the same as student ID in a lot of places, and then some of it comes out of this school-wide aggregate data file, the baseline file. So this can get very useful, and they just updated it. It changed the way the visualization works, so that's why it's so messy. It used to be this beautiful, perfect dual star schema. A star schema is when everything links back to one table, and it was very nice, and now it's an ugly mess. But if you hover over this, it will tell you what the relationship is. So if we scroll down to student ID, we find student ID here. If I hover over it, you can see it's telling me student ID to student ID is the relationship that exists here. See how they're highlighted?
Oh, okay. Mine doesn't. Oh, never mind. That's student state ID. Sorry. Oh,
Okay,
perfect.
yeah, that's that. Okay, there you go. A useful little trick in Power BI. I don't know. We don't need to talk about it right now. Never mind. You can put these things into folders for, over here when I've got a bunch of columns that are calculating, and it's not on discipline, it's on SQL. I put the things into folders and just throw all the columns into a folder so that I can find the things easier, because some of them, like if you look at NWEA, it can just get really messy with all of the things. So, but we can do that another day. Okay. We've got a nice little report here with some filters. We've got that NWEA data, and the NWEA data is now in here. It's imported, it exists, and it has a relationship to the demographics table. So what we're going to do is make a new page. So right here, you click the plus at the bottom, and now there's a new page. You can click between the pages, page 1 of your report, page 2 of your report. So I'm going to call this FSA. I'm going to call this NWEA. So when users load this up, they'll see on the left-hand side FSA NWEA as the little paginated view, and they can click between. It just gives you more real estate space to do multiple reports instead of trying to crush everything into a tiny little space. So now let's try cross-filtering. So let's do the same thing we did with this. We want grade level, but we want their projected proficiency on the FSA based on this NWEA data. So I'm going to go look at your NWEA data. I'm going to scroll all the way out. The FSA data here, FSA projections, when I check it, the column is projected proficiency level 2 is the name of that column. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I've got projected proficiency level 10. Here we go, projected proficiency level 2. So I'm going to stick that in the values. Whoops. As you can see, I wasn't clicked into the tool that I wanted. That's why it just made a new thing there. Projected proficiency level 2 in the values, projected proficiency level 2 in the axis, and change it to count. So now it's got a count of all of the kids projected at each of the levels, but this is looking pretty inaccurate. If I had to guess,
please tell me that that's not correct.
Yeah, I don't think you actually have 2,850 kids projected at level 1. So why might that be? If I come back over and look at the data over here, and I tell it, I'm going to put a filter on, and I tell it, give me every kid who scored a level 1. Well, actually, it is 2,854.
Is it because it's reading across multiple subjects, like for math, reading, and science?
Yep. So math, reading, and science, and every assessment that's ever been given at your school, all of those things are showing up, and it's telling me every kid who ever took any NWEA, 2,853 level 1s. So what can I do here? Well, this is where filters are useful to control the data and not to let your audience control the data. That is why I like to hide the filter column. So we're going to grab some things. If I come over to the NWEA data and I look at it, this one's called subject. So I know the subject column is going to be useful. So I'm going to throw that into my filters. And now I can see I've got 5,600 language arts, 5,700 math, 3,700 science. So if I click language arts, now I'm seeing every ELA test that ever happened at your school and their levels. But we're also missing the assessment period. So that I check over here. I know this says winter 21. So that's called term name. So now we need to grab term name and stick it in the filter. And I can set it to, I just want winter 21-22. So now I've got the projections for each kid on the FSA for the most recent winter assessment. Now on this one, remember, we were looking at it by grade level.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to move projected proficiency to the legend, but grade level, it is on NWEA. We're going to pretend it's not on NWEA. Grade level is on our demographic file. So because we made that relationship, I can grab grade level from my demographic, put it on the axis, and there it is. It's going over to your demographic file, grabbing the kid's grade level, going over to the NWA file, grabbing their NWA test, and then filtering it down to just winter language arts. So when we open it up by grade level, you'll notice second grade is showing up as well because NWA gives you a projected score for second grade. We can see third grade, 26 kids projected to get a level 1. 28 kids at a level 2, 40 kids at a level 3, 17 kids at a level 4, 2 kids at a level 5. So we can really start to target. Looks like 5th grade is going to be our biggest trouble spot here. We have the most potential level 1s in 5th grade. Our MTSS coach, Ben, you should be heading out and let's talk with that 5th grade ELA team. What are we going to do here? Some of these things look kind of gross. So this axis here, I don't count a projected proficiency of level 2. I don't like that. Y-axis, I'm just going to turn it off. Oh wait, sorry. I'm going to open Y-axis and turn off the title. Title off. There we go. So now I know 0, 50, 100, 150 kids, but it gets rid of that. Grade can stay there. We can change the colors. Data colors. What did we say? It was red, orange,
yellow for 2.
Green, blue.
I think you switched the 2 and 3s.
I don't think I did.
Oh, okay, sorry.
It's okay. And within that formatting, you have control over all of this. So, you know, you want to change the title, you can. Make that, you know, a different color if we want, whatever. You can center it, turn it to the left or the right. You can make it bigger if you want, make it bold, italicize it, underline it. So you can get pretty singular with reports, or you can make them small. You know, that's what I like to do when I make my report dashboards. I'm sure you've worked in the stock take. It's just a designer choice, but I like to put multiple tools on the page to give you kind of like you're coming here to look at this data. This is what I think is important. So you could do that for your teachers. You know, here's all the data we want you to know, or you could do go in, here's the report, here's what you can look at, break it down. You can throw your slicers across the top and give them that chance. This is ugly. So this is all under legend. If I click that, I can turn the legend, I can change its name, you know, give it a better look, or just turn the title off entirely and just let it say what it is. Make that bigger or smaller, do whatever you want. Some other things that are in here, under general, you can change, these are all pixel counts, so you can X and Y, move it vertically or horizontally. Width and height, change how wide or tall it is. What else is in here that matters? The visual header. You may have noticed whenever you hover over a thing in Power BI, it gives you the filter option and it tells you here's what it's filtered to right now. So this is filtered to language arts and winter. It also gives you focus mode, so you can click it and make something the size of your whole screen. You can turn that off. If you turn off visual header, it goes away and then your users won't be able to see it. So I do that. If I go to the actual Power BI, when you're in here, like I turned off visual headers on all of these buttons because I didn't want you to be able to like focus mode a tiny little button, you know, and I don't want it popping up, but I leave it on for some of these things so you could increase the graph to the whole page and look at it. Tooltips are also useful. If you put in a tooltip, you can write in whatever it is. Oh, that's an action. Sorry. So with tooltips, it's what'll happen when you hover over it. So you can set it to pull up text or send you to somewhere else. But we can go into that in more detail at a future date. Okay, that's formatting. And then the analytics, you might play around with this as you get further in, but these allow you to do things like add a constant or add a line for your axis. So I use those on, I don't know if I still have any on here, but I used to use those. So like right here, you can see there's a trend line on this report and shows you by grade level how the RIT scores are improving. That's a trend line that I added to that report. So you can add those as well. Okie dokie. So that's cross filtering. I'm going to give you a rundown of the visualizations that you have access to. You've got all sorts of bar charts, stacked bar charts, cluster charts, clustered columns. Clustered columns is a very useful one for making grade level comparisons. So if you're, for example, looking at most recent FSA, and then you could put the cluster on grade level, and then put FSA on the legend. Now you've got, and I need this to be counts, not sums, counts. Now you can see fourth grade, you know, 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s. And that's maybe easier for someone to process as compared to the stacked chart. You can now see the proportionality a little easier. You've got line charts. So line charts, very useful for measuring data over time. Less useful for looking at like concrete averages. I use that a lot for like attendance data. Ribbon charts, I just love because they look pretty, but most people don't use them. Funnel charts are useful for giving vertical comparisons. So for example, like number of OSS versus number of ISS versus number of referrals written. And you can sort of see the proportionality there. Also called a tornado chart. Scatter plots are very useful for seeing the relationship between two things. So for example, if I take, let's say scale score, I take their FSA scale score, put it on the ELA axis, FSA ELA. I take their math scale score, put it on the y-axis, and then I need to tell it to break it out by student ID. So the kids are the breakdown. Here is now a relationship of all of your FSA scores, and you can see your outliers. So like this kid, not as good at, and you can see their student ID when I hover over it, not as good at math, but way better at ELA. This kid, and this is where you can also add your trend lines again to sort of see that relationship. That's more advanced statistics if you want to get into it, but I do find it, you know, they have their uses. I just want to let you know that that exists as a tool if you want to start getting into those analytics. Okay, anything you think you need to know or anything you want to know? Any questions you have?
Is there, I assume it's in the demographic data file, but it might not be, but like homeroom teacher, could we drill it down into specific classes? No.
It's not in the demographic file. So you could do that. The way you would need to do that is you would need to go into Focus and pull the master schedule report. You would go to reports, you would go to district reports, you would go to test coordinator. Let me set it to Bell-Lago. You would go to test coordinator, you would go to student schedules, and then you would export this. Now, when I open this up, I've got every kid, student ID, and their teacher. So we would go save as, browse, my Bella file, name this ELK8 schedules. You can see that the tab has a name here. It's student schedules. That means that Power BI will automatically name it that instead of sheet 1. It's just a little tip of the trade. Close this, and now when we go into Power BI, we're going to get data again. We're going to get data from an Excel worksheet. We're going to get BellaLago schedules. Student schedules load. It's got an error. I'm not going to even check it because it only affects 8 kids. So I'm just going to load it in. And now we've got student schedules. And now you can take the teacher's last name, put it on as a filter, and see Gonzalez. It's going to adjust down to her kids. Oh, wait, I didn't build a relationship. That's why I didn't adjust. I need to make a new relationship, manage relationships. Student schedules connected to demographics. Why did that not work then? Because it's single direction. That's why. It needs to be both directions. I need one active relationship. Done. Close. Now it should adjust. If I go to teacher last name, look at Miss Bartamola. There you go. 8th grade. There's all her kids.
I noticed that you connected it to NWEA versus the demographic file. Any particular reason? If the other one's connected?
I connected it to the demographic file.
Oh, okay. Okay. I misread.
You probably just, because demographic was the antecedent there, you probably saw that NWEA and then student schedules. It's NWEA and demographic, and then student schedules and demographic. It's by row.
Okay, perfect.
So you can see that now we've got a little star schema going on. All of the data is connecting to this table. So what I want to do now, any other things that I add, if I add MTSS data, I want to connect it to the demographic table.
Okay.
So that would be like if I go get data, and I know I've got your BellaLago MTSS data right here. And I'm just going to bring in the main reading tier, math tier data. So close, that's fine. I'm going to name this MTSS. I can manage the relationships. I can see that it did auto detect a relationship, but it detected it. Oh no, it detected it right actually. MTSS to demographic based on student ID. Let's just make sure it's both directional. It's not. There we go. And now I can grab this over here. That here. So now we have a nice little star schema. All these things connecting based on student ID to this data. So now I could say, give me reading tier 2 kids NWEA data, because it's going to take the student ID to check here and the student ID to check here. And because they're all filtering on the same data, I can check all of these things to each other. So I could now say, let's go over here, get rid of this. I want a matrix of every teacher ID in the school. Oh, that's in filter, sorry. Every teacher ID in my rows over here. And there's all your teacher IDs. And then I want the, their fall to winter RIT growth. Fall to winter, not conditional growth. Fall to winter observed RIT growth in the values. Take the average. So here's your average RIT growth for every one of those teachers. But I know that RIT is very, like a kindergartner grows 10 points in a year and an 8th grader grows 3 points. So I'm going to stick grades on the columns. And now I can see some of these teachers have kids in multiple grades. But here's their average RIT growth. So this teacher teaching this kid, this is probably gonna be like your art teacher, something like that, the one who's showing up with a bunch of kids. Because it's gonna take every single kid, and every teacher is gonna be, because when we look at that student schedule file that we made, what you'll notice is that every teacher is represented multiple times on a kid's thing. And for elementary, it gets really weird, because for elementary, each kid is ELA reading, ELA writing, ELA triple I. So it's going to go in and say, little Benji has a RIT score of 4 in reading and a RIT score of 4 in triple I and a RIT score of 4 in writing. So he counts 3 times. So what you can do to control for that is go to student schedules, go to you can do period, you can do course name, but we want to do, let's look at that file. Let's look at what the columns are. I want this one, course title. So let's do course title, put it in the filter, and let's filter it down to just, ELA or whatever, or grade, not grade. So, MJ grade 6 math. Or, well, these are all ELA scores, aren't they? So, what is the name for the ELA?
Is it like research? Are you talking about?
No, the elementary one.
Language arts.
Oh, yeah, it's called language arts.
Oh wait. Okay, yeah. It's Lang, right? Lang Arts.
Yeah.
There we go. Well, that's just the middle school one.
Oh.
Lang. Go look at a kid's schedule.
I was attempting to go in and pull that report that you pulled, and I'm not able to.
Okay.
Let me try.
Millie definitely should be able to.
I'm better.
This kid's in Access. That doesn't help.
Like, if not, we can always check with Rasmussen, right, Ben? Since he had the special access today in our leadership team meeting.
Okay, that's what I thought. It should just be grade. Okay, I'll have to look into this. It didn't pull your schedules for your elementary kids. Or it did, it just didn't pull all kids.
Weird.
Okay, I need to look into that. That's probably something that's going on in Focus. Or something that we set up in that report, but it's missing some data. Still works to illustrate.
What was the name of the report, Dave, in Focus that you pulled for the master schedule?
It is reports, district reports, test coordinator, student schedules. And it should give you every schedule record in your school, but right now it's missing some. So we'll figure that out.
See, my report for test coordinator doesn't have all that either.
Okay, we can look into it.
Like, I have accommodations and things like that, but not student schedules. I wonder if I switch my user.
Do you have it? If you click all reports and go to the 4th page, do you have it?
Let me see.
I have it there.
Reports.
Oh, you know what? No, it shouldn't have done that if I didn't export.
I don't have it there either. Actually, hold up, let me see.
Same thing. Okay. I'm not sure what's happening there, but that's a problem for another day that I can figure out.
Not a problem.
For now, if you pull in those schedules, we can work on getting you permissions later. But pulling in the schedules, you can filter down to teacher ID. And I'll have to figure out why it's missing some courses. And once I get that fixed, I can just send you an export of this. Yeah, I'm pulling from the wrong. Well, whatever. It's gonna eat at me all day. But that is how you can start to really stack up your data to pull from different sheets. Like you can see the little yellow check marks. This is pulling from 3 separate sources to put it all together and give you one data report. So
That's great.
that is how you would bring in homerooms. Did you have are there other data requests that you have?
Well, we want to do a little bit of data digging with the teachers. So, we were going to bring in like the students' due dates, especially for those kids that are LY. We want to know who counts. We wanted to do the lowest quartile, just kind of like the different components that are used to calculate our school grade, so that we were going to meet with the teachers through our MTSS monthly meetings and just say, this is your data specifically. This kid counts this many times for this subject area, because you have some that are going to count for achievement level, but they may not count for learning gains if they don't have a test score from the year before.
So
the due date depends, will also determine if they count or not. So there's a little bit of information there that we want to kind of put together to get with the teachers.
So some of that you can pull in easily by just creating an Excel sheet and matching it in. So for example, due state, we're going to come over here, run an advanced report. Run an advanced report. We will grab, so we just need student ID and due state, right? So we're going to grab their student ID because that's what we need to match it on. And then we're going to grab, is it date entered? So it's under ELL, right? ELL. First entered US school. Run the report. So now you've got a report for every kid who first entered a US school. We're going to save this. I'm going to drop it in my folder of all of my things. Okay, deuce. Then when I come over here, I can run a get data. Go here, data entered US. And oops. Oh, you know what that is? That is that I need to save this as an Excel file. Oops. Saved it as a tab delimited file, and that doesn't work. Okay, so there we go. Now this should properly connect, get data, Excel, due state. Grab it, load. So just telling you what happened there. When you pull something down from Focus, it comes in as a CSV file. And if you save it, or a tab delimited file, and when you save it in that way, if you just drag it from your downloads into the folder, it won't be in the Power BI readable format. You have to save it as an Excel workbook.
Did you open it back up and then save it?
Yep. Yeah, I opened it up and I saved it as an Excel workbook, and then it worked fine. So now we can do first entered US school, and if we're taking our NWEA data, let's say we want to get our RIT scores. So that's in RIT scores, test RITs, in the values. And we'll say, give me subject in the column. So there's ELA Math Science, average RIT score. So there's your average RIT score. And then we want to do date entered US school. You can filter it here, and we can change this to advanced filtering. And I can say, only show me where the date is before 2 years ago. So 1/07/2020. God, 2020 was 2 years ago. So only show me kids where the date is before 2020. Apply filter, and now you're going to see your scores just jumped up because we took your kids who haven't been here long enough to learn English out of your English tests group. So this is now filtering the days. I mean, that's not going to be exactly your due date, because your due date's going to be 2 years at the day that they take the test, but you could, do the same thing and set that to May 7th, 2020. Any kids before May 7th, 2020, please filter out. And now it's looking at their due date, it's looking at their student ID, and it's grabbing their student ID from NWEA, and there's your average. You could also do something like give me a table of all of these kids' names. Oh wait, maybe I don't have names on there. I don't have names on your data shard. So give me a table of all of their student IDs. I just want to know all of the student IDs by row. So here's each kid's student ID, and give me where the due date is after that date. Here's all your kids who entered the US after that date. Here's all your kids who entered the US after May 7th. Do you remember how to do the index match, Ben?
Yeah, I have your email that walked it through as well. It's kind of, it seems like it does that for you versus having to plug in a formula. Is that essentially it?
It does, yes, but index matching is still very useful with Power BI, because if we come over to your demographic file, this is the district demographic file. I don't need that. Let me go to your Bell Lago demographic. There you go, Bell Lago data shard. You could come out to the end here, and you don't have student names, right? So what we can do is name. We can go into Focus, make a new report. We can get every kid's name. First, last name, run report. Here's all their names. Open it up. And now I can do an index match equals index. Grab all of these names, because I want to index the names, comma match. I am matching cell A2, the student ID, to this list of student IDs here. And then do comma 0 for an exact match. Because I did it between worksheets, it'll automatically add the $ signs for me and lock the data in. It doesn't if you do it between sheets in one workbook. Carry it all the way down, and there's every kid's name. So now we have their names here. also means you can't share this video with anyone outside of the school district. To keep that student data safe. And in Power BI, I just changed that demographic file. You'll notice name is not here, right? Because of when I pulled it over. So what we do for this is we click refresh right here. So we refresh, and now it's going to go read my demographic, my NWA, student schedules, MTSS, day use date. It's going to reload all of them. And now when I come over here and look, I've got name is in here. So now I can add name to the rows right next instead of student IDs. And here's the names of the kids with the day use dates, date entering the US after that date. Just anytime you update the data like that, go check your model, make sure that your model held. So demographic is connected to day use.
Why are those boxes unchecked there? What's going on?
So these are non-active relationships. So remember, we want everything to connect to demographic, right?
Yeah.
So this connects demographic to demographic to demographic. This one's backwards. So we'll do Bella Days connects to demographic like this. And then student ID to student ID, both directions, active relationship. But it also said, well, the student IDs on the MTSS table are the same as the student IDs on the day use date table. But notice that it's not checked. So you can't make any data connections on this. It's an inactive relationship. It's just letting you know this exists. What I do is I generally just go in and delete it because it just looks messy. So there's my everything's connected to the demographic table. I go here. It's all beautiful, beautiful star schema. Just wonderful, perfect piece of data. Okie dokie. So nice. And now this should apply. Not applying. Okay. Oh, because I took due state off. I was like, why isn't this filtering down? Took due state off. Okay. Okay. The date is after November 5/07/2020. There we go, filtered down. So those are your kids who entered the US after May of 2020. You can see here, this kid entered August of 2021. This kid here entered August of 2021. So you got a fair amount of kids. I wonder how many kids. Let's do this. Make a card. Card here. I want to count the number of unique student IDs. So here it is, count of student IDs. And I want to filter that down to kids who entered the US after May 6, 2020. Apply. It's 181 kids. And now I can leave this here. I can add a slicer. How many of those kids are ESE? It's 18 of them. 163 not ESE. How many of those kids are free reduced lunch? 94.
Yeah, so when we look at this, Ben, we just have to make sure that we're looking at the grades that are actually taking the test, because like some of those kids are like in first grade and in kindergarten. So when we're breaking up the data for the teachers, we just have to make sure that we select the right grades.
So let me add a slicer for grade. And I actually want this to be, let's see, this drop down right here, I want this to be a list of grades, and you can select, I want them to be able to do come over here, selection controls. I want them to be able to select all or click multiple. So I unchecked multi-select with control. And 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 19 kids total.
That's great.
So I assume, I guess, most of your day use kids are like kinder. Oh yeah, 72. Yeah. First, 186. So 158 of them. But in just your testing grades, bam, 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 19 kids. This is really ugly. I don't know why it's totaling their earliest entry date. So what I'm going to do is come over here and I'm going to go to subtotals and I'm going to turn it off. No subtotals. There we go. I've got a list of my kids with their date entered U.S. school. So that's how you model in Power BI. As you feel that you need things, you can bring them in. You can match them onto the actual data sheet. So if you're maintaining some kind of like master school-wide database, you can match it into there and then just refresh it whenever. Or you can build it on and bolt things on as you go. There's benefits and negatives to each if you're index matching things in. Every time you update the sheet, you have to index match them in again. So you constantly have to rebuild those columns. If you're bolting things on, every time you go to update it, you have to pull that data separately as another sheet and save and refresh the sheet individually. So if it's something that I'm updating that I really need to be active and current, I usually index match it in because I'm going to be keeping that in whatever my updated spreadsheet is. If it's something that I use, okay, Panorama happens 3 times a year, I just put that in and link it on Student ID. And when I get a new one, I can go in and add those rows. So like, for example, whenever NWEA happens, I just go pull the new NWEA tests. I drop them in. I just insert them right at the top. So I actually have like, hundreds of thousands. We actually checked earlier, 491,000 rows of NWA assessments in there, which is why it takes my Power BI report a long time to refresh the data.
I have no idea why.
What?
I said I have no idea why.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, like, when I first started doing it, I was like, this is insane. It's so much data. And then as I started getting into like deeper Power BI stuff outside of like the field of education and looking at people's data sets where they're like, well, we've got one row for every single day that has happened since 1960. And it's like, oh my God. We've got one row for every transaction and we do 200,000 transactions a day. Some of those data files can get incredibly large.
Yeah.
So, but that's your basic theory. As long as you know how to add in new tables, make relationships, and build your visualizations, everything else beyond that is a matter of just practice, getting used to it. The 2 things that I haven't shown yet, which we can go into now, are publishing this to share with other people, and calculated columns and measures. So like making things happen beyond like, this is pretty singular. It's representative of what you're filtering it to, and it can be very versatile based on your filters, but it's not doing like, if you wanted to know, like a percentage or whatever, it's not going to be reporting that. So that's where calculated columns and measures are going to get useful. Thinking like if we should go deep into that or not, because that's where you start to get into like the coding aspect of Power BI, and it can get pretty complex pretty quickly.
I think that the publishing part is what we'd really like to look at, because we want to use that with them.
Okay. Yeah. Now I will say, if you're bringing them in, having a conversation, you can just publish it for yourself. You don't necessarily need to share it out, but we will go through this. So we're going to put these things up here, clear all these filters. These are those just a little bit larger and make sure they don't overlap with each other. Okie dokie. Let's see. Like the secret backend for Power BI, no one ever gets to see.
I'm like, yeah, you've got the logos and everything.
I know. I was like, that's
Yeah.
neat.
This is how.
Yeah.
So this is how when you
Yeah.
when you're using Power BI and you filter to a school.
That's how it shows up.
And then your logo shows up here. That's what it's doing, is it's finding it in the that spreadsheet, and then I've prioritized it to do that last after all the other data connections. So it always shows up when when your loading is done. The reason I grabbed your logo is because you can just paste images into a report, and I copy it. Sigh.
Did not grab it?
That's not grabbing that image the way that I want it to.
I can send you our logo.
It's fine. Got it right here
So,
on the website.
I'm like, so you don't have to use one that's, that one looks fine. It doesn't look fuzzy.
I think what I actually need to do is save it as an image, go to your file and do the LK logo. And then when I come over here, I can do insert an image, the LK logo, and there we go.
There you go.
So now that'll appear on this page. And we can grab these things, move them over. We'll do ethnicity first because it's the biggest. Sometimes if things get covered up like this, you can go to view and then do selection, and it gets you a new tab, and I can click through and find my right slicer. Which one am I looking for? The one that got covered up. PSE, gender. Okay, this is the gender one that I covered up. It also uses the like click lock from Publisher. It'll show you like things that visually align. You can see the red lines appear when it's aligned. So that's what I like a lot, getting this spacing in here. Okie dokie. Get rid of that selection. Hide filters. Okay, turn that off. I want to hide my filters when I upload this report because we're just going to use the slicers. Also should make sure that this filter is empty, that I don't have any teacher selected. If you have a filter and you set the filter, when you upload it, it will stay set to that. So if you've ever like opened Power BI and like it's set to one school and you can't turn it off and you're like, wow, why can't I go off Harmony? It's because I was looking at Harmony in my designer view and I forgot to unclick it when I did the most recent update, which I have done before, unfortunately. So, okay, I'm going to save this. So let's save this as, I'm going to go save it where all the rest of the files are. It'll save as a .pbix. And this is going to be the BLK report. When I go to publish, you have workspaces in Power BI. So if you load into Power BI, and I go to home, you can see right here, you've got different workspaces. You will by default be in my workspace, but if you want, you can put things into other workspaces. So you should have a Bellalago. They're all based on groups that you have. If anyone's made a team in Microsoft Teams or a group in Outlook, it will exist as a workspace. And you can actually, if you want to, load the Power BI report into Teams, but just go with the workspace. The reason this matters is that if you load it into My Workspace, only you will have executive access to it. If you load it into a school workspace, you can give other people executive access to it. So I do most of my things in the REA workspace, but for this one, I'm going to publish it into My Workspace. Select, and now it's going to publish. It'll take a minute. It's a really small report, so it should be done in like 60 seconds. The Power BI district report loads in like 7 minutes, to give you an idea. Okay, it loaded. So now when I go to My Workspace, I should see there's a BLK8 report. There are 2 files here. This is the report, and this is the data set of all of those spreadsheets combined that made the report. So when you are sharing this, you have to be really careful with setting your permissions because you don't want them to access the underlying data. Every kid's NWA, every kid's demographic file, every teacher's schedule, that's all in here. So if the teachers could get in and you share it with them and they can access underlying data, they could go hog wild. So just as you are sharing out with other people, I would recommend use this ellipsis and go to Manage Permissions. And then when you do a link, I do direct access for people, and I add a user. And I'm going to add you. I don't allow you to share it with other people, and I don't allow you to build content from the data associated with the report. But I do send you an email because that's just nice. So now you can see you have access to this report. So if you were to go log in to Power BI now, you will see you've got a report in the dropdown called BLK8 report. And click shared with me if you don't see it on your homepage, and then you'll find it. Now, if I click and open this up, here it is. Here's the report. You can see there's no filters bar over here because we hid the filters, but we didn't hide the pages. So we've got the pages right here. NWEA and that page 1.1 that we made, the day use report. And all of these things are checked because I left them checked. So it just loads up the way that I loaded them. But the report that we made is here.
Great.
And then slicers, you can do whatever you want. Show me, ESE mails, non-ESE mails, and free reduced lunch. It'll auto adjust to all of those things. So that's that. When I'm making a new page, I like to right click and duplicate the page. And then I just delete the stuff that I don't want, but that'll keep all my slicers and my logos. So if you've got like a nice report and you're like, now I want to do the exact same thing, but with NWA data, just copy and paste. And then these things, you can just delete the variables and go in and adjust, and you can get pretty quick with that. You can also, sometimes I do like a experimental page. It's where all my machine learning stuff that I'm doing in Power BI is. I keep it hidden because it just gives me a lot of bad takes. But you can hide it and then no one can see it. That's another fun one. Where is it? It's this key influencers. So if you go to, if we look at kids, let's look at their most recent FSA scores. Most recent FSA. So analyze their FSA and explain it by gender, ESE, ethnicity, ISS, OSS, referrals. So there you go. If a kid has fewer referrals, their achievement level is likely to go up. This will actually work better if we use scale scores. Analyze by. Let's see what else. Grade. If you're in a higher grade, you have a higher RIT score or a higher FSA scale score.
That should be right.
Yeah, it very much should be. Gifted, free reduced lunch. If you're gifted, you're much likely to have a higher scale score. ELL, let's take grade up. That's going to confound it. Days absent. So you can put these things in and it will try to tell you like, hey, here are the things that make kids, if you're LY, your ELA score is likely to decrease. And if you're not gifted, your score is likely to decrease. So you can get to some interesting analyses this way. And also yours didn't turn out racist, which mine usually do when I look at it district-wide. And classist. It also says like, try having fewer kids be poor.
Does it really give you like?
Yeah, it'll say like, if free reduced lunch is no, scores will go up. If free reduced lunch score is yes, scores will go down, which it's like, you know, it's looking at a regression, it's looking at a trend to try, and there's a relationship there. But the fact that it uses this like affirmative language of like, if you set this value to whatever, the result is this, always comes out sounding like classist or racist. So you guys have a pretty homogenous population at your school, like 60+% of your kids are Hispanic, 60+% of your kids free reduced lunch. So it's, I mean, way more than that are free reduced lunch, but you're also a CEP school. So it's, that you get that community eligibility form and we don't collect the data. But so I will do that like experimental, and then I'll hide the page if I'm gonna, you know, mess with things that I'm working on, so other people can still be seeing these pages, but I can have my page that I'm, you know, messing around on and like keep it hidden from view.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully you walk away with an idea of what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Sure thing. One last thing, when you're in this table, if you need to do a thing like you want it to say yes if a kid is absent greater than 10 days.
Okay.
That's going to be this right here, new column. You add it, it gives you a new column. And we can say this like, give it a name. This is going to be chronic absent. And this is where you get into DAX code. So like if days absent year to date is greater than 10, comma y, parentheses y, comma, and you can see it's telling me what's your logical test, what is it if it's true, what if it's false, and this is a very simple one, but run that, hit enter, and now it's going to tell you here are all your kids. Most of your kids don't have more than 10 absences, but some of these kids do.
Yeah.
And now when you come back over here, you can use that value as, okay, get out of here, blank page. You can use that value as a pie chart, and you'll see that it has a little calculator here, or a little function column, chronically absent, and I can throw that into values. It's so few kids, it doesn't even matter. Let's do it as this. Oh, wait, no, that's not true. It's not so few kids, it doesn't matter. I didn't put it in the legend. There we go.
I was going to say, like, pretty sure we have more than that.
Put it in the legend, and now you can see you've got 1,072 kids with fewer than 10 absences, 111 kids with more than 10 absences. So that's a calculated column. The same, you can do the same thing with a measure if you want it to. Columns will make the data for every single kid. It makes this data exist. Measures are much more useful if you like want it to, you know, make me a single number. If you want it to like count all of the kids. So like I have a school grade Power BI that I've made, and I tell it to count every kid who got a score on the FSA for ELA. So count me the denominator, and then do another one and count me the numerator. And then I put it into the formula as numerator over denominator, and it gives me a percentage. That's how we get our grade points. So if you want one number to come out of it, a measure, for the most part. If you want every kid to have an individual point, a column.
Yeah.
That can get incredibly complicated. That's where DAX code comes in, but just showing you that it exists and it's available. Okay, that's what I got for you. When you're publishing, just be careful not to share it, not to share those creative permissions. You can also use this, see metrics, and this will show you everyone who has access to report. So I can now see that no one in this entire organization has accessed my report because I just made it 5 minutes ago.
So with that, the report that you sent me, I can't edit anything in there, right? That's kind of just, you know, that's what it is. Okay.
Yep, I didn't give you permission to do anything with the underlying data.
Okay.
You could like, you can kind of do some stuff with this. Like if you click the pin, you can pin the visual to another dashboard, and you might do like, I want to know my boys who are free or reduced lunch, and then you can pin that to another dashboard and make your own like hodgepodge of it.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be able to like take it out and make whole ticket. Like you could not use this to say like, show me kids' genders. Well, you could the scale. You couldn't say like, show me kids' days absent, because I didn't put that data in here. You can only use the sandbox that I built for you.
The publishing, do you have to resend it each time you publish it, or is it published right to the same place each time?
Well, you have to tell it to publish to the same place. But if I were to come in and refresh my data, run the refresh, you know, now it's grabbing all those sheets again, and maybe I changed some things, or there's new NWA scores, it's going to automatically update all those things. Then I publish, save my changes to the PBIX file, and I have to tell it to publish to my workspace again. And if I do that, it's going to say, do you want to replace this one? Yes, I want to replace it. Now, when anyone goes in, it'll be the newest data. With the caveat that I'm sure you've experienced this 100 times in your role. If you open Power BI, you have to hit refresh to get the newest data.
Okay, but whatever you sent to me will pull that up. Like whatever I would send out would update them as well. Okay.
Yep. So if you have, so the best thing you can be doing if you're keeping the data in like a row schedule, or if you're keeping row context data like these NWA scores, and just drop them in. If you can just drop them in at the bottom and keep a list going. So like next formative assessment comes in, drop the new scores with the exact same columns, but the new data. Then you update it, send it out, and it goes automatically.
Okay.
So that's like when I do district NSGRA data. You can see this is the database behind Power BI. It is rather expensive.
Yeah.
So when I do NSGRA data and I'm looking at that, I do the kid's name, the period of the test, and then whatever they got. And I just drop the next test period in, you know, drop in fall 21, I'm about to drop in winter 21. And I'll just drop it right in on the bottom. And then when I click update, I can go set my filter from fall 21 to winter 21, because it's automatically detecting and pulling all that data in. And I can update the data very, very quickly, just as long as I know that it's coming in from School City. You can get into automated updates with SQL and whatnot, but that's in a lot of cases, it's more trouble because you're having to get other people to set up their columns properly for data imports, set up their tables properly. And I just tend to find it quicker for us to just be managing a couple of Excel sheets so you know everything's going to go in, and then just refresh your dashboard whenever stuff updates. So for like this, you know, you've built your big master spreadsheet, and the next FSA comes in, you can just drop them in on the bottom.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Let me know once you get started and running if you need any support in setting this up. I will save and record this video, and it should be just in this meeting invite, but if not, I'll find where it is and send it to you.
I appreciate
Thank you
your
so
time, Dave.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
That was really good stuff.
glad to hear. Have a good one.
Thank
right,
you.
you
Have
too.
a good weekend.
Bye.